Right, I think we can go ahead and kick it off. Today is
Hello.
August 13, 2025. This is the meeting of the CSI Community. And with that, folks, do you have any agenda items you want to add today?
I was hoping that Hemant would join because we're still working through some very challenging issues with the controller modify volume error handling. I'm trying to get him to join right now.
Okay, cool. Let's see.
Is there nothing on the agenda? I haven't looked.
Yeah, we don't have anything on the agenda right now, unless somebody else on the call has something.
Oh, I see we have Weiwen and Sheng. So we have some of the people who are well informed in this issue.
I think we need Herman and
Yeah, well, Hemant was talking about on Slack this morning about concerns with it. There's this belief that it's possible for users to manipulate the PVC in such a way that you can like get higher QoS without being charged for quota for higher QoS, and like I just don't understand how that's possible. So I'd like to understand it because like that's what's driving a lot of the concerns around how we're implementing controller modify volume on the Kubernetes side. Um, and I think if we could just address those issues with worries about quotas and people abusing quotas, then like we could just simplify everything instead of
I
having
think
this.
yeah. So
Oh, we have him on. Welcome. Okay.
yeah, sorry, So no, I was saying
Sud,
that
Sud
like
already Sud already kicked off the recording, so we're officially in the meeting.
okay, no problem. So yeah, so there are two things. One is like from final to final modification, like when the PV volumes are left in partial state, then obviously the quota is like the issues that we talked about I think yesterday, where one modification to one VAC fails with final error and we don't know which of the fields were applied, and then another one fails. So it's like we
But
lose.
I want to understand the how things go bad in a no error case. If an administrator carefully sets up their VACs and the SP is implemented in such a way that like it's always doing things that succeed, like setting a QS policy. Like setting a QS policy should never fail if the QS policies are valid and the administrator's job is to make them valid. So, like in a world like that, how could someone ever abuse the feature?
So for the case of like it fails with in progress error, the issue that I linked in this thing, right? Like
Okay, like it's taking a long time, so you get a timeout. That's
yeah, you
the
get a timeout, or some of the other non-final errors that we consider in Kubernetes, like the aborted or like any of other concurrency related errors, which will be
okay.
resolved, or the storage
But those
provider.
those should be uncommon, right? Like setting a QS policy is unlikely to take 30 seconds if
Oh,
people
actually,
have written.
it takes long. Like from my experience, volume modifications take way longer actually than you would expect, more than 30 seconds. So, like for example, I remember for AWS it takes longer actually. Like just changing the size and modify volume is part of the same API call, so it takes longer.
Yeah,
Uh,
we at Alibaba Cloud also have very long modify volume, which may take hours. Yeah, we are doing the data migration in the background.
so
Wow. Okay, well, so that seems like an SP problem. Like in principle, controller modify volume should be able to make most modifications rapidly. Like if someone chooses to do something slow behind the scenes, we should discuss that. But like
well, if
setting
it's
a
I mean,
setting
our
a
use
QoS
case
policy,
also,
there's no reason for that to take more than microseconds.
well, in our use case is also going to take long. It's also could be take hours.
it doesn't sound like a SP problem, Ben. It is how QoS modifications are applied. It is not instantaneous.
Okay, so walk me through. So QoS modification is going to take at least a couple retries to get done. So what can be abused while that's happening? Assuming that at the end it will get done.
Yeah, so while that is pending, user can, if free modifications to any random things are allowed the user, they can go back to the original VAC A to which way they came.
Yeah.
And then if the storage provider already started the operation of doing this, like applying the thing, and that's not gonna, there's no way to cancel that operation.
Oh,
Then
okay. So you're saying what people are going to abuse is the fact that it takes longer than one cycle, and so it's not going to succeed on the first try.
but the storage provider has started the
But it
operation.
will eventually succeed in the background, and that the sidecar will never know it succeeded because the user said, "Hey, I want to cancel, go back to the old one," and the sidecar says, "Okay."
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. I was trying to understand like what was going on here. So the basic problem is because these operations in practice take longer than one timeout cycle, you can initiate them and then pretend to cancel them, and they will actually succeed, and the cancellation will never happen.
Yeah.
But in the initial design, we have the uncertain error, which is timeout. So if we just timeout, and we will continue to walk to the previously specified VAC and ignore the what is the user specified.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So as long as the sidecar handles this case of it's an uncertain error, and we have to get at least one non-uncertain error before we go back.
Yes.
this is not correctly handled in the sidecar.
But could we handle this in the sidecar correctly?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
It's
this is
not,
written in the cap, I think.
yeah.
The sidecar has a bar.
Is that the only thing we need? Is to just make sure that if someone tries to abuse this loophole where you go from A to B and then you go back to A while the transition to B is still proceeding, that we make another call to say, hey, I actually want to go back to A, and then rely on the SP to ensure that it does get back to A eventually.
well, this is the easiest, the one of the easier or not easiest, easier of the problems to solve. And I think on this topic, everybody is on agreement that users should not be able to, for in progress modification, which storage provider has already started in the back end, the user should not be able to change BAC until that operation is finished. I think on this, everybody is on board with this, correct?
But shouldn't they be able to say like, hey, I want to go back to A, and then have it go back to A?
Eventually, yeah, sure, they can express their.
Okay. You're saying that they can change the spec, but the reconciler will keep reconciling it towards B until it gets a non-final error, and then it will reconcile back to A.
Yeah. Their operation do not fail. It's not like it's rejected in Kubernetes. There's still it's still declarative. It's just that it doesn't get applied immediately.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
then
this is like the one of the easier roadblocks. So like I think for the more thorny issue is like for final errors, like what do we do? Like PVC VSEA to be or nil to A fail with a final error, like where the storage provider is not making any modifications in the background. We know that, like at least by convention. Then what do we do? And I think the like yesterday one of meeting that we had and so far whatever discussion we had, I think there's a desire to let user move to a different VAC for final errors, because user can get stuck, and a lot of systems may not care about, they do care about quota, but may not care about quota as strictly as we think we want to care. So in my
because the person who cares about quotas is the same person whose job it is to make sure that you don't have these errors, right? It's the administrator. And the kinds of final errors we're talking about would result from an administrator making a mistake. So if he cares about quotas, he should just not make any mistakes with his VACs, and then he won't have any quota problems either.
Well, there's two ways of looking at it. One is like where a cluster is entirely owned by one organization and they own and operate and they're okay. Then there are some clusters where somebody else operates your Kubernetes cluster and they want to be more careful about this, how the quotas apply, that they want to prevent any kind of like weirdness. So like I've been thinking
Well,
from that, from both angles actually. And I think, sorry, Ben.
you go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think the way forward is to have a strict validation mode of external resizer where it does not let you change VAC as what we discussed. And there's a more relaxed BAC mode where you can change for final errors and so on and so forth. Like if a going from A to B failed with final error, you can go back to C. You can go to C or you can go back to A.
Yeah,
That
so
is allowed.
this would be a command line arg for the resizer sidecar, like strict
Yeah.
mode, true or false.
Yeah.
And-
I think that's the way forward on this.
So okay, so if strict mode is, well, what would the default be in your mind? False.
I believe that I believe that like for backward compatibility, we might want to keep strict mode false and or yeah, it'll like the start with strict mode false and then you admins who want to enable strict mode, they can opt in. So yeah.
Are we going to have to document this at the Kubernetes layer in terms of how VACs work? We're going to have to explain to end users your cluster might be running in strict mode and therefore your VACs are going to behave like such and such, or they might not, and therefore they'll behave differently. Because that's what I want to avoid, is having to communicate to end users this complicated set of rules that could arise from, you know, their administrator screwing up and their volume getting stuck in a weird state.
So we will have to, but we'll have to document it in Kubernetes layer. But but to clarify, another thing, like even in the strict mode that we discussed, users can still express their intent. Like, okay, A to B, I went and I want to, that failed with final error, and I want to go to like the
C. I want to go to C.
C. Yeah. So in that case, actually, like there's nothing preventing there's nothing preventing the actually in that case it will require a user intervention. So it's not entirely declarative. You have to actually change back to A and then only you can go to C. So yeah, that's not as hands-free as we want it to be. Yeah. So we'll have
it seems to me that the storage vendor should be able to document how they've implemented VACs in their driver in such a way that an administrator can construct a set of VACs that won't fail when you use them, and that no matter what sequence of transitions you make, like you always end up with a known state, right? And then it's up to the administrator to read those docs and set up their VACs correctly. And if they do that, I don't see where final errors are going to come from. Other than like the system is actually broken and the administrator has to go fix something. But like if in a world where the storage vendor has documented their driver properly and the cluster administrator has read the docs and constructed their VACs accordingly, and the system is generally healthy and not on fire, like I just don't see how we're gonna have errors that need dealing with. And if there are errors, like someone's gonna have to deal with them because they're either actual like cluster problems that a human needs to get involved with.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I agree. Yeah, like, but operating a Kubernetes cluster, you do tend to have like internal error and like just the like storage is unavailable on the node where it is hosted for some reason. You're getting internal error. It comes and goes away. So like in that case, the storage plugin will decide to throw internal error, and so that's a kind of a final error. Like
right, but I mean, in that case, and the user says, okay, well, I'm going to give up on B and go to C. Assuming that C has all the keys specified because the administrator read the docs, like it will get to C, and then
Yeah.
you'll be charged quota for C, and then so there might be a short period of time where like it's not consistent, but you'll always end up in a consistent state. So, and I'm not worried about little blips where the quota was wrong for 10 seconds because you had to retry. Like it'll converge on a sane state. I don't see a situation where you end up in like endless loops of internal errors, and now you're getting the advantage of a volume with higher QoS than your quota is charged for, or something like that. That doesn't seem like it can happen.
Yeah, I mean, provided all the calls have their keys, like the property is fully specified, but like as Drew was saying yesterday, customers, people who run Kubernetes cluster, they don't want to specify keys that they don't care about actually. So
but that should be like the storage vendor should just document to their users like, hey, if you specify a VAC and you omit the QoS parameters and you have quotas on these things, like people can abuse your quotas by a carefully chosen sequence of transitions, and like that's just. But if they don't care about quotas, then it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. So that's why I think that like we should like okay. So here's the thing: we may not. Do we want to protect storage provider from shooting themselves in the foot or not? That's the bottom line. If a storage provider, there's two things. Do you want to prevent a storage provider from shooting themselves in the foot, and do you want to prevent cluster admin from doing something that is wrong, that they may not know
I think we
about?
want to give them the tools so that they can achieve correct behavior. Like it's always the case that people can do insane things and get bad behavior. Like we never prevent people from putting garbage in their storage classes.
So yeah,
or
exactly.
anything else.
In my mind, like the strict mode is kind of like the straight jacket that is given that, okay, your storage provider has this property, and storage provider will recommend what mode to use, and admin will deploy it, and then even if they make mistakes, they will be okay. That's how
I'm arguing that like we don't even need the strict mode at all. I mean, I'm open to the possibility that we could have it be optional, but like I think we should try to just eliminate the need for it entirely and have a non-strict mode as the default. Unless we can come up with like a real case why this is necessary. What I'm hearing
I
is
think that I think the strict mode will be, this feature is just rolling out as customers use in like all sort of environment, like where for example, like a lot of deployments are one provider manages a bunch of other person's deployment, other companies' deployment. In those cases, I know that from my experience, people who are deploying those clusters, they want the default that are given to the end customers to be very safe. So like in my mind, it's like
are those people using quotas on VACs?
They're using quota on storage classes and other things, so they will want to use quota on VAC. In OpenShift, we have not yet rolled out, for example, VAC as a GA feature. So we'll see how it goes. But my point is like from my experience, like people come to us with all sort of like reduce down the permissions in like cases where they want the clusters that is given to the user to be as strict as possible. So in my mind, it makes sense to have a strict mode that cannot be easily abused.
But like the strict mode would only behave differently from the non-strict mode in a situation where either the administrator had made some errors or what? Like I'm trying to understand the circumstances under which this would even matter.
The strict mode will allow users to where the arbitrary transitions are not allowed. Like if it is failed, then user can only go back to original VAC. If it fails to another VAC, users cannot go back from nil to A and then go back to nil arbitrarily. Like that is another abuse that it will avoid. So, and that's a real problem, right? Nil to A and back to nil is like, I don't know if we want to. We have to actually pick up and choose for non-strict modes what are the validation we still want to keep, but that will take another longer discussion. But
well, the CSI spec. Given this is the CSI meeting, we should discuss this. The CSI spec currently specifies that if you call controller modify volume, the parameters can't be empty. There has to be at least one non-empty parameter.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
That's why we say you can't transition to nil, because there's nothing to do on the CSI side when you make that call. Because nil literally means like I don't care. It's not like an end state. It's just it's a declaration that you're not declaring anything.
Yeah.
So do we need to fix that? Is this a gap?
No.
Like,
You're going back to nil, but like you.
But
You went
do
to
we
A
want
and
do we
B
want
and-
to be able to say like go back to what the default was, like by calling controller modify volume with no parameters and have that?
No, that is impossible to implement in practice. We
Not
kind of
necessarily. No, I
discussed.
know. I assert that it's not. I'm saying that
It is impossible to implement in practice, like
the
going back to
SP
original state, but with empty
the SP could
parameters.
remember what the storage class parameters were when the volume was created.
No,
And it could.
no.
It can.
No, it cannot, because you are assuming that there will be a storage class, that there are volumes that are created statically provisioned and they still have a VAC, and users can have like there's just too many scenarios.
No. But when you call create volume, a set of parameters are passed in, and like the SP could store those somewhere, and if you have a statically provisioned volume, you have to store something there, and you can choose to store nothing, but that's the same as like using an empty storage class. Like it just becomes a problem for the SP to say, where am I storing my defaults? I'm using scare quotes with defaults. And then you could say, well, anytime I get a controller modify volume that omits a field, I'm going to interpret that as use the default for that field.
No,
like there's nothing that stops an SP from implementing that. And I imagine some will.
SPs are by and large stateless. Like I do not remember AWS, GCP storing anything actually in Kubernetes.
Yeah. The CSI driver itself tends to be stateless, but that's because it's relying on an underlying system that has state. And I'm saying you can shove all this state down to that layer, and then rely on the layer below you having the state.
No, it's too much. Like I do not think
I'm just saying the CSI spec doesn't have an opinion on how people do this, and I imagine somebody will do that.
No, we have thought about going back to calling controller publish with empty parameter, and that's not implementable in practice. There's just too many edge cases, too many. This thing we can theorize that okay, user SP can save the parameter somewhere and all that stuff, but that's just not practical at this point. Like we do not expect storage. Yeah.
If there's a certain field that must have a value, and you call controller modify volume and you choose to omit that value, the SP has to do something. It has to either say I'm not going to change the value, or I'm going to go apply some default that's a global default, or I'm going to go apply some default that is per volume that I remember somehow, right? I mean, it has to do one of those three things.
Yeah.
You're saying that the only thing it can do is to do nothing, and I'm saying no. It could choose to apply some default or look up some state that it has somewhere and do something else. And like the CSI spec is silent on whether that's okay or not. It just says, you specify some parameters and the driver will do something.
Currently, the CSI spec actually specifies that if you omit a parameter, SP should not change that one. Yeah, it is explicitly specified.
We added that language?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we probably had this discussion before, and that's how we resolved it.
It's going to be very hard to implement. Yeah, like.
Okay, well then that works with saying that you can't have no parameters, because then it would literally be illegal to change anything in response to a request with no parameters, and then you can't call modify volume with nil. Or I mean, you can't
So
set a VAC to nil because it wouldn't mean anything. It would basically mean forget what quota I'm being charged, but keep the volume the same, which is just violating the quota system.
so
Yeah.
coming back
So
to
that
original
is
discussion.
my proposal is to keep the previously specified VAC in the target VAC name field, so we can still charge quota for the previously specified VAC. So I think that will be fine.
So that for infeasible, that doesn't work for some providers. Like if nil to A failed with infeasible and they want to go back to nil, they don't want customers to pay for A. For infeasible errors, just infeasible errors.
Okay, so
But
so
that seems like an administrator problem, right? Like it failed because the administrator screwed up A, right? Not
No, no,
because the user did it wrong,
yeah.
or because the storage vendor had a problem.
Yeah.
That's just an administrator error.
So should
so
the user pay for that administrator error or not? That's the question.
That's the administrator's problem. It's
No,
not our
but I'm a
problem.
the
no,
administrator
but no.
can create another VAC and which is maybe free or it's cheaper, and user can still transition again to the new VAC to escape from the quota.
So again, administrator and the PVC user, these are two different people usually in companies.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
administrator screwed up. They created a VAC. The transition to that is infeasible. User tried. Should they still pay for the quota for that or not?
The person they're paying is the administrator, right?
Sorry?
Like if they're paying for anything, the person they're paying is the administrator.
No, the person that you're paying is who is running the project and the PVC, because PVC is a namespace resource. So I have this namespace Elasticsearch that I'm running an Elasticsearch project, and I don't want to pay for transition to a VAC that was infeasible. That doesn't make sense. Because just because the administrator like screwed up, and administrator in some Kubernetes cluster, the administrator could be a different person in different organizations, so they have to open a support case and follow it and fix it. And in the meanwhile, should the user pay for that quota?
I guess I don't understand these complicated organizational structures where
no,
the person who created the VAC is not the person who cashes the checks.
No, yeah, a lot of companies have those two people are different. Actually, person who created the VAC and person who uses the PVCs. Like that's
no. The person who uses the PVC is the person who writes the checks. I get that.
No, not writes the check. A person who uses the PVC could be a web developer in a different vertical in the organization. They have their own budget. It's not
right. That's what I mean. It's money out of his pocket. He's the customer. Yeah. And he's paying the provider, and the provider is responsible for setting up both the quotas and the getting the VACs right. And I scratched my head trying to understand, like, how can you get the VACs wrong in a cluster that you're responsible for?
Well, the question is not that how you got VAC wrong. That is okay. That you got VAC wrong, that will happen. It's like the Murphy's Law. The question is, should the user, a PVC, the guy who pays for that, should he still pay for it if the transition to the VAC fails?
I got to do a time check because we're at the top of the hour again, and this meeting is over. I think we should continue exploring the strict mode switch. I still prefer that it doesn't exist, but it sounds like you're making some arguments that it should, and that seems like a path forward.
Yeah, I think the strict mode should exist. Now, the thing that we have to iron out is like what should be the non-strict mode defaults, and we have limited time, by the way, because Kubernetes 134 release, we need to make a sidecar release with GA APIs, and the feature is on the road to GA. So yeah, I mean, whatever we do in the CSI spec doesn't matter.
I was going to say, for the record, this doesn't sound GA to me. This sounds beta, but it's not my call to make. So. I want to keep working on this.
That's okay, but I just want to clarify that. we have.
I would prefer that the feature stayed in beta given these kinds of discussions.
Yeah, +1. I think if we go through this iteration, maybe we want to do another beta.
The feature has been GA'd in Kubernetes.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see. So these issues already exist, and so there's no option necessarily to.
The only way we could do is like, and it was scheduled for deprecation in 134. If we did not make progress, then we had to make V1 beta 2, and then yeah, that's like another mess actually that we had to solve.
Yeah, I have to run to my next meeting, but I'm open to the strict mode. I as long as the default is the non-strict and it's sane, I'm happy to have there be a more strict mode that people can access if they're paranoid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you.
Bye.
Take care.